So we're talking about mystical experience belongs to everyone, right? Sometimes we have really profound, earth-shaking mystical experiences. Has anyone ever had one of those life-changing mystical experiences? Don't be shy. Okay, me too. But most of the time, it's not like that. Have you noticed? And John of the Cross, in Dark Night of the Soul, he's not talking about depression. We use it that way in kind of common language, don't we? I'm going through a dark night of the soul. My dog died, my husband had an affair, and I have a suspicious mole. It's like too many hard things. This is a dark night. And I understand, and actually that I think it works pretty well, but that's not what John of the Cross meant. John of the Cross was speaking about a radical state of spiritual nakedness. And it's not like, I think I'm just going to take my clothes off and be naked so I can make love with God, although that is ultimately what's happening. That spiritual nakedness grants us intimacy. That is direct connection with the divine. That's the definition of a mystical experience. But really, a dark night of the soul is not a choice that we make. It is, John of the Cross describes it as a spiritual ripening, a maturing on the path. We've been walking, he says, for quite some time along the spiritual path. We've built up a certain kind of robust capacity to engage in spiritual practice, to be able to taste the presence, the divine presence. But in a dark night, in the beginning of a dark night of the soul experience, what he calls the night of sense, that kind of bliss bubble of spiritual life pops. And we're kind of plunged into an aridity, a dryness, where the things that used to turn us on along the spiritual path are not working anymore. It just feels very empty and dry. So maybe we used to have very sweet meditation practice, or chanting the divine names in kirtan, or hymns in church that used to leave us with this feeling of exaltation, goes away. I mean, you might as well be singing the I don't know, so I don't watch television, but like a commercial jingle instead of God be with me. So that dryness, has anyone ever experienced that? And John says that can feel like you're doing everything wrong. Like, what have I done? What am I doing wrong? I thought I kind of had this down. So the night of sense isn't anything you're doing wrong. It's a blessing of being freed of yourself, getting yourself out of your own way, so that you can, in fact, enter into a deeper intimacy with the divine. And the second of the two phases, stations, to use a Sufi term, of the dark night, is the night of spirit, when nothing, the conceptual constructs come undone, and we can't even conceive of religious ideas anymore. They don't make any sense. The God language just sounds like babbling. So we progress from a sensory attachment that loosens, that feels like dryness and aridity inside, to a crisis of faith where it just, nothing holds up. Our belief systems crumble. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Your belief systems begin to crumble in spite of yourself. I'm going to help that along, I hope, this week. So John is speaking in this small section I'm about to read about our ideas of what a spiritual experience is can be very big and flashy, but it doesn't have to be. And Jim Finley will speak more about this. There is an everydayness to our spiritual lives that I'm encouraging you to reclaim, that I think Jim Finley will be encouraging you to reclaim, and Gustavo Santaolalla also, and that you're probably already in the mood for. an ordinariness, an everydayness, an accessibility that a lot of the spiritual traditions have not pointed out is possible and permissible. But 500 years ago, John of the Cross said this: those who God begins to lead into the solitude of the inner desert are like the children of Israel. God gave them manna from heaven to eat, which contained within itself all flavors and turned into the taste each of them most hungered for. Still, all they could feel was their craving for the meats and onions they ate in Egypt. This is what they were used to, and this is what they preferred over the delicate sweetness of the angelic manna. In the midst of that divine food, they wept and sighed for the meats and onions of Egypt. Our appetite can be so base that it makes us long for our own wretched rations, repulsed by incomparable heavenly plenitude. If only souls that this happens to could just be quiet, setting aside all concern about accomplishing any task, interior or exterior, and quit troubling themselves about doing anything. Soon, within that very stillness and release, they would begin to taste subtly of that interior nourishment, a nourishment so delicate that if they were purposely to try, they could never taste it. So, a couple of things. John of the Cross says that the dark night of the soul, when we enter into this night of sense and our sensory attachments to the way we thought God was supposed to feel in our experience are taken, it grants us access to a direct and intimate encounter with the divine, because the covering is removed, but we're not used to it. We're very attached to our ideas of what it's supposed to feel like to be spiritual. And it's not your fault. We were conditioned to expect that, whether it was by a fundamentalist Christian orientation or the doctrine of karma in your yoga class. We are conditioned to expect this kind of fireworks, the spiritual fireworks. But when we are truly invited into the divine presence, John says, is when all of those constructs are taken from us. And it usually happens in spite of us. There are two aspects also that he speaks about, not just the night of sense and night of spirit, but the active night and the passive night. You've been doing the active work. You've been engaged in the discipline, the spiritual practices. And now it's time for her to take over. Do you mind if I say her? Okay, good answer. She takes over. She takes you into her arms. It is a mothering darkness, this dark night of the soul. It is not depression, although depression can be sacred, as we all, I think, know. But this is the darkness of the womb. And so our invitation is to let ourselves down into those arms and let her take over. And that's when the manna drops. And the manna, John points out, contains the flavors that each of us love best. So if it's, what did we have the other day that was so good? Mint chocolate chip gelato. That's your manna. Whatever your spiritual version is of mint chocolate chip gelato, that is the spiritual nourishment that is available to us in this desert. And the desert is a space, as you all know, a landscape, where it appears on the surface to be dead, to be barren. But if you hang out If you show up and slow down and start looking around, the desert is teeming with life and beauty and richness, nourishment. But these desert passages are vital for our spiritual growth. Anyone ever pass through one of those spiritual deserts and to another place? So I want to kind of close this up a little bit by making the linkage with grief and loss. I think many of us are grieving right now, not only in our personal lives, which is a lot, maybe. Maybe you've experienced the death of loved ones. I've had a bunch of those lately. Just people I love who've just gone, like in the last few weeks even. You know, we go through periods like that. But I'm also grieving for the world. I ache for the incredible devastation and loss of life in Gaza. As a Jewish woman who feels, a sense of connectedness to the Jewish people. I mean, I always will. It's in my bones. I'm horrified by what's unfolding, and so many people are just looking away because we're not right there. We don't have to see it every day. So we get to worry about, the Dow Jones Industrial Average and how my butt looks in a pair of jeans. It's so easy to look away. It takes a lot of courage to keep looking at the pain, at the suffering. And many of us have been brought to our knees by this last election. Whoever we voted for, this sense of polarization, of division, of hatred, of lack of, as Tim Shriver says, dignity, basic dignity in the human community is heartbreaking. And so many of us have dragged our asses to this room this week. See, I didn't say weekend. Broken-hearted for the pain in the world right now and wondering what is ours to do and how to hear it, how to get quiet enough to be able to hear it, to hear the call that is ours. The rabbis say it's not ours to finish to fix the whole thing, but it is, do you remember, Michael, what that quote is? But it is ours to do our part. There's a beautiful rabbinic saying, I can't remember exactly what it is. But there is this connection, this is what I'm getting at, between the grief and the sacred, that entering consciously through the portal of the broken heart, through what I sometimes call the fiery gate of grief, we enter into sacred space. If we turn away or medicate ourselves or try to consume our way out of it or around it, actually you can do that and you're welcome to it, no judgment. But we can also choose to stay present and step through that circle of flame into the sacred landscape. But don't expect bells and whistles and a bunch of angels saying, thank you for doing the work of showing up. We're so glad you're here. Yes, angels are there to welcome us with great gladness, but it's subtle stuff. It's just like it was on the other side, but bigger, but gentler and more loving. Because the capacity of the broken, open heart can contain reality. Reality doesn't go away, but the container becomes more ample. I know you already know this. We're all here to just remind each other. I wish there was some alternative to the sage on the stage model, but so far well, in the second part, we're gonna take a break now in a minute, but in the second part, we'll get to connect more. My point being that whatever I'm saying, I know you already know.